and welcome to Encore at Illinois. And our panel this evening is titled, I Wish Someone Had Told Me, Lessons Since My First Rehearsal. We're excited to have a wonderful panel here. My name is Anthony Messina, Assistant Director of Athletic Bands, and I'm really excited to host this with my colleague, Dr. Andrea Shoya from the choral department. How you doing, Andrea?
I'm doing really well, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and have the panel introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Josh?
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Johnson. I am in my fourth year teaching. I graduated from the university in 2017. I taught for 2 years in a suburb of St. Louis called Kirkwood, Missouri, and I am now teaching and the assistant director of bands at Traughber Junior High, which is located in Oswego, Illinois. It is a western suburb of Chicago.
Hi, everyone. I'm Faith Tsou. I graduated from U of I December 2018, and I am currently teaching orchestra for Jefferson Middle School and Centennial High School, which are both the two local high schools in Champaign.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace, and I graduated from U of I in spring of 2018. I started my first year of teaching at a high school near Starved Rock, if you know where that is, if you've ever gone hiking over there. I'm now in my third year of teaching, second year at West Aurora High School. We have about 6 curricular choirs, 3 co-curricular choirs there, and I am the assistant director of choirs at the school.
And I am Jordan Fansler. I graduated spring of 2019. This is now my second year at Harold L. Richards High School, which is in Oak Lawn, Illinois, just south of Midway International Airport in the south suburbs of Chicago. I am the one and only director at that high school. We have now 2 ensembles with a total of around 95 students learning music and band there. And I also teach AP Music Theory.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Shoya.
All right, then it's my turn. Let me say really quick for our listeners that I taught all of these former students musicianship, right? Oh boy. Now we will know it was useful or not, or maybe not. And Grace was also one of my choral music students, so I really had her for most of her semesters here at the U of I. All right, let's see our first question. And all of these questions were submitted by our students. Our first question is, as a teacher conductor, how do you connect with your students? What strategies do you suggest?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start. And I think that, first of all, I would say that building relationships, maintaining relationships, being genuine in those are pretty much the backbone of everything that I believe in as a teacher. And I think that it is something to say that you care about kids, but I think it's a totally different ball game to demonstrate that on a daily basis. And I think that kids don't really care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And so one thing that I try to make sure that I do in everything that I do with my kids is just try to listen. I try to get to know them on a very personal basis. I make sure as they come into my classroom, I'm always at the door waiting for them. I'm always at the door when they leave. And I really try to take as much interest in who they are as individuals. So I like to talk to them about sports and music and anything that's outside of just the band realm. I try to really get to know them on a personal basis. And I try to bring those things into the classroom as I'm teaching, or even sometimes as a maybe having like a discipline thing. I try to tie those things in just so the kids know that I am not just some dictator who likes things a certain way. You know, I just feel like the kids have to know that you are a person deep down. And I think that that is really just the basis of being a really great teacher, just really having those strong relationships and nurturing those and continuing to go forward.
Yeah, going off of what Josh said, getting to know your students outside of orchestra, or for me, orchestra, is pretty important. One of the first things I did as a first year teacher was to go to as many of their extracurricular events as I could, which I don't know does a good thing to my work-life balance, because I was like at baseball games till late in the night and then I go home and lesson plan. But it really meant a lot to the students to see me at their sports events, their recitals, or even their like youth theater productions, even if it has nothing to do with music. Kind of like what Josh said, it really shows that you care about them beyond a musician level. One thing I also want to add is that it's okay to not talk about music all the time. There are days, or not all the time, but there are a couple days where I'd be like, we're just going to do a random Kahoot quiz about fruit, and just like something totally random, just something fun for them to enjoy each other's presence and have good memories. And I think I was afraid to step outside of the music realm, but to them it means a lot to see that you like, you know, are normal and you can be funny and goofy. I will also add one more thing. As a teacher of color, I like to stay true to myself. So I like to share about my culture. We did some Chinese New Year activities, and it really helped engage with my Asian students. So those are a few things that I feel like are practical when, I guess, connecting with students.
That's great.
For me, connecting with students comes very early, as I'm sure it does for all of these teachers here. But I have a few like bullet pointy ways, like things I was thinking about that are like check, check, check. Like I just feel like these things really work for me. So I love to ask my students questions. And this happens like before and after class, like just go up to them and ask them about something. Like the other day, I like went up to a student and she was wearing like a like purse that was a strawberry milk carton, and I was like, where did you get that? Like that is just so cool. And then she was like, I'm shy, but like I'll tell you. And so like it was just like really fun to like talk to her and get to know her. I love to tell my students stories. Stories are the way to the heart. And this is something I learned from Beth Peterson. She said this right before we left for student teaching. She was like, tell stories, like you must do it, because it's the only, like it's one of the only ways that humans can learn and relate. And so I just try to tell as many stories as possible. And I let my students tell stories too. Sometimes we just do story time, especially on Zoom. That really worked last semester. I take pictures of my students. So like, I love to create community within the classroom. I just take pictures of them and then I show them the pictures and they're like, wow, we're all so connected. Look at us. Like they just love it. I love taking photos of people. So it's like a strength of mine. And I also, on every Wednesday, I do this thing called Wellness Wednesdays, where the students will write affirmations to each other, to me, like to whoever, and they're anonymous. They put them in a bucket and then I read them all in the last 5 minutes of class. And somehow connecting all of them makes them feel more connected to me. I'm not really sure how, but it's like just like this group vibe that happens when I connect them. And usually that's through photos or Wellness Wednesday messages, team building, of course, like all of those really fun activities, just like making them laugh. And one last thing I'll add is like, stay with the kid who has no ride home, like the kid who is there after the concert and like obviously you're tired and you want to go home, but like usually the kid who has no ride might be the kid who's like blurting out a lot in your classes and might be the kid who you're like, man, like I just like can't figure them out. You have some time with them to like figure them out. And I've done that a few times in my career at this point and it has paid off so much. So yeah, stay with the kid who has no ride. That's it.
All right, I'll try my best throughout this to not be Sir Summary over here as I am the caboose. But I'll kind of touch on things that everyone have said a little bit that I really agree with. Like Grace said, I went through and I kind of made some bullet points on how I think I connect to kids. And by far and away, the number one thing is just kind of being yourself. Kids can tell when you're not genuine. Kids can tell when you have some sort of facade in front of you, when you're acting like you care about Teletubbies, because I don't care about Teletubbies. Sorry. Like, I'll ask you about it if you have a Teletubby backpack, sure. But I'm sorry. Like, they're going to know. So talk about things you actually enjoy. And everyone that's watching this, I'm sure, has a deep personality and a lot of different things they like. And you're going to be a well-rounded university or student at the University of Illinois. I'm sure of it. So talk about things you enjoy doing and kind of spread out a little bit, and I don't know, just be yourself in the classroom. As we get through all these questions, almost all of them can probably be answered by being yourself. If you try and be someone else, you're going to get into trouble. You're going to get into content you don't feel comfortable teaching. You're going to be in situations where you don't know how to react. So just be yourself. You've been practicing being yourselves for what, 18, 19 years now? So you're probably pretty good at it. So be yourself. The kids like that a lot. Other things, like everyone said, ask kids about their day. You're going to be in the band room, the choir room, in the orchestra room, in the hallways in the morning, because you have to be. Instead of finishing your lesson plans like at 7:50, just get to school 10 minutes earlier, do your lesson plans then, and then be in the hallways, because there's going to be a kid that's lost. There's going to be a kid that has nothing to do in the morning, and you having a connection with that student, even for those 2 minutes in the hallway, is going to make it a lot easier when you tell them to play B natural with their second finger for the 15th time in the middle of rehearsal on a Thursday. So just kind of be yourself, and I guess, yeah, that's what I have to add.
That's great. A couple of big takeaways for me was just the idea of getting to know your students on a personal level, which was fantastic. And then I love all of you in some way said something about like letting your personality shine. We all have things and interests, and when our students see that we're just normal human beings too, and that we actually don't sleep in our classrooms, right? We don't exist outside of that space, that there's a connection there. That's great. Really wonderful answers. So I'm going to ask y'all to be a little vulnerable for a second. Think about what was a mistake that you maybe made in your first year of teaching that either taught you the most or caused you to reevaluate and change how you teach. So why don't we start with Faith on that one?
Okay. I'm sure there were many mistakes, and maybe I just, buried them in the back of my memory and didn't want to recall them. So it was a little hard thinking about like more concrete examples, but like a general rule of thumb or a general mistake I made was the mistake of thinking that I will get this right the first time. So I guess that's more of an encouragement. Like, you're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. It's going to be like, it's going to be a hectic first year. But I think what got me through is knowing like, okay, I have the following year to do it again, or I have tomorrow to do it again. And to the students, they probably won't realize you're making a mistake. So that's kind of nice. But I think my first mistake was like having such high expectations, thinking like I will turn out exactly like my former orchestra teachers. But now that I'm friends with my orchestra teachers on Facebook, and I see their posts about their first year of teachings or like their mistakes that they make in the classroom, I realize, okay, everyone's imperfect in their own way. So that's kind of reassuring. One specific mistake I feel like I made was getting too focused in the details. I guess that came out mostly with rehearsing. I was like drilling in these like fingerings that I forgot to like take enough time to go over the whole piece. So then when it came time for the concert, it was just like a disaster. A lot of kids froze, and then I didn't know what to do. It was just very messy, and that was like my second concert of the year. So a little discouraging, but even in that, we went back to the classroom. We talked about it like, hey, what can we learn from it? It's okay. We made mistakes. I made a mistake. So yeah, mistakes aren't the end of the world, I guess. But those were some of the ones that I made.
All right, so I'll give a concrete example of something, I guess you could say minor or real, that happened to me that I can put my thumb on and say that was a mistake. And then I'll give a kind of a overarching theme on mistakes. That sounds terrible at the start, but you'll understand what I mean. So I'll say my first concert was in December. It was a holiday concert. We're actually a marching band school during the day at my school. So the first 3 months of teaching for me was marching band during the day and a couple times after school. So we didn't really have, I guess, sit down band until after playoff football in the pouring snow in Chicagoland, which is terrible. Anyway, so my first concert was in December around 5 months into teaching, and kids were really prepared. I was really prepared. We were not doing crazy things. And then I got in front of everyone and I realized I forgot how to talk, apparently, because I had never been the person standing up and saying all these things that needed to be said about like the composers and all the things behind the pieces and how the semester has gone for us. I got through it, but it wasn't pretty. So before your first concert, take some time, maybe a week before, and think about what you're going to say, because it'll sneak up on you. And then I'll say, for my second thing, I'd say a mistake that I've made a couple times, and I'm trying really hard not to make again, is regret in the classroom or with things I've taught or how I've reacted to situations. I think the best advice probably from me this whole time today watching this video would be prepare yourself for situations as best you can, and then just take the things as they come to you. Kind of like you're an infielder in a baseball game. You know, you don't know if the ball is going to bounce up high, down low. You're going to do everything you can to prepare for it. But if it hits you square in the jaw, that's fine. Pick it up and throw it over to first. Maybe you'll stop them from going to second. There's things that can happen that you're not ready for, but that's okay. So just kind of take it off the chest, take it off the jaw, and realize that you've done basically everything you can. You've tried your best, and we'll get them next time. It's not a huge deal. So that's my biggest thing, is just kind of keep going, because there's 180 days you have to teach in the school year, and the next one comes up in like 8 hours. So get over it and try again.
All right. Who's next?
It's me. So, 2 mistakes I made in my first year of teaching. One, over programming. I was like, oh, like it'll be fine. And I didn't really know my students yet. And so I think like, just when you're programming for concerts, just like ask like other choir directors who teach the same age as you, because I think like I was just like overly ambitious with the programming, but like we ended up making it work. I just had to be like really hard on my students getting ready for the concert, and that shouldn't really be too stressful of a process. So something I learned. And then also there's just this weird situation with auditions, and I made the mistake of really thinking that the whole audition process for students was like just the audition and that's it. Like that was the only thing that determined what choir they were going to be in the next year. And I don't know why I thought that way, but I just did. And so then a kid didn't make it into the top ensemble who really thought that she should be there. Parent got really upset. I'm in a meeting with the principal, parent, and student, and like it's just like not a fun place to be in. I think I handled that part pretty well. And I was like, I really care about your daughter, and like, I'm on your side here, and here's the audition, and this is what happened. But I think like if I could go back and change anything, I would. What I do now with auditions is like, yeah, the audition is a part of their placement, but like the child shows you what they're doing all year. And so if I look back, like that student did deserve to be in the top ensemble. And so it's just something to think about. Like when we come out of college, we're just very hardwired to be all about skill and sight reading and like all of that. And that's really important. And you want to teach your students that, but like, it's just, it doesn't have to be that intense. So that's mine.
I think everybody said a lot of really fantastic things. So I'm trying to find out what kind of my bearings are with it. I think from everything that I learned in my first couple of years, I think the biggest thing, and kind of going off of what Grace said as well, just how you're wired from college and et cetera. One big thing that I have learned is to, whatever decision that you're going to make, or when it comes to either grading, things like Grace just mentioned, or discipline, or whatever the case is, I think you always need to ask yourself first, what is the outcome that you want to happen? And whenever I stop and ask myself that, or I feel like I'm in a difficult situation and I ask myself, what is the outcome that I want? It always changes my perspective on things. And I think it has really evolved what my teaching philosophy is. And I'll give you an example. For me, my philosophy is all really centered around student mastery. And so what I've noticed is that now kids nowadays have a tendency to turn things in quite late, or have a tendency to kind of like get to it as things go. And at least for me personally, I grew up in secondary and in college, you have a deadline and your grade is going to be affected if you don't turn things on time. And I understand why those things exist and why those boundaries are set. But when I really stop and ask myself, what is the outcome that I want? It really changed my philosophy on those types of things. So if I give the student a 0, or if I take points off, it doesn't really demonstrate what the kid has learned or what the skill is that I'm wanting from the kid. But also, to me, it's much easier to let that kid take a late grade or take a 0 or whatever, where that is going to affect all the other kids in the group, And so I guess as I have gone through things, I always ask myself, okay, if this kid is not doing this, is it a me problem? Is it a kid problem? Or what is the case? And to not take things so personally. Oftentimes we get really personal and we take things the wrong way. And 99% of the time, it has absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with something that transpired before the kid got to your class. So just in the way that I deal with anything, I always try and ask myself, what's the outcome I want? And I have that guide my decision versus me dealing with things in the spur of the moment.
Excellent. Well, what I've heard all of you saying that you all made mistakes, I can say after 23 years of teaching in one way or another, I still make mistakes. And what's the beauty of that? That you over saying in one way or another is that all of these mistakes made you a better teacher in a way. You were able to move forward and change things that you did that differently, and then you won't make that mistake again. It's easy to remember, or it's easy to forget that your mistakes, it might feel bad at the moment, but those don't define you. That's not who you are, and it's just a momentary thing. You have to make changes and then move on and do the next good thing you're gonna do. Anyways, so that leads us to another fantastic question. And I'm not even sure why I'm asking this, but I'm asking this. Take it a little personally. This leads us to things which you wish you were taught in school, and wish you were taught as an undergrad, or that would have allowed you to be more successful maybe in your first year as a teacher.
If I might, before Jordan takes it over there, I also took it as, maybe something from your undergrad that you definitely were taught, but maybe didn't realize at the time how important it was.
Oh, that's a good.
Could be, another take on that for sure.
Yeah, like Shoya told you to learn how to do a minor 6, and you're like, oh.
All right, I will start. I'll say something that was probably taught to me that I did not remember, or it was 8 a.m., so it was a problem for me, was the secondary instrument situation we have going on. I'd say I knew how to play all the secondary instruments pretty well. And then I don't know what I did with that information, but it wasn't with me anymore. So in trying to learn again and looking inward, trying to see how I could be better at this, I ended up just kind of relating things back to certain pillars in my own musicianship that I knew to be true. So like I was trying to relate things back to B-flat concert. I'm a concert C instrument guy. I play the trombone. So I was relating things back to different things I already know. I don't need to get into how to teach you secondary instruments, but take it seriously. That's what I'll say on that. Another thing I'll say is something I've used a ton for the instrumental folks out there is Music for Concert Band by Joseph Kreines. This is a book that I got from my dad, who's also a band director. Basically what it is a crutch that I've fallen back on a ton with programming concerts and things like that. It goes through, and there are other resources like this, by the way, but this is the one I use. It has easy, medium, easy supplement, medium, advanced, and it goes through, gives you basically the grade of the piece. It gives you the length, it gives you the style, and a little bit about each piece. So facing a incredibly disorganized library and my first year teaching, this is the book I used to kind of go through and to try and find maybe a easy march that I wanted to do, or a medium difficulty, slow lyrical piece that I knew was going to be good because it's in this book. And so I kind of went through, listened to some of them and annotated it a little bit. So I kind of have an edge up on myself as I go forward in my career. I can come back to this book and see the songs I've done, kind of know a little bit about it. So again, that's Music for Concert Band by Joseph Kreines. And it's just something I picked up outside of my teaching at Illinois, so I thought I'd share it.
Okay, so I'm gonna list 3 things here, and these 3 things that I wish I would have learned could be either during undergrad or during student teaching, either one. It's just like learn them the best way you can before you get to teaching. So the first one is how to fill out a purchase order. Like, girl was lost in her first year. Like, I was like, what is that? So like any just like figure out what it is, ask your cooperating teacher, just anything. Be like, can I please fill out a practice purchase order? Like, whatever you need to do. But just make sure that you get that done. And then also auditorium sound design. So in my first year of teaching, we did not have an auditorium director, but we did have a beautiful auditorium. And I had very willing band students who wanted to work the sound for my choir concerts. And so they were like, well, what do we do? And I was like, and so I had to like pretend like I knew, but like it would just be really nice if you like, because you never know what kind of job you're going to end up in. Like right now, I'm lucky enough to work in a school where we have 2 auditorium directors and they work everything out for us, and it's incredible. Like, I'm very lucky. But in that first year, like, you just never know where you're going to be. So if you can ask your cooperating teacher, or like, I don't know if the music education professors know any of that stuff, but just like watch YouTube videos, just get to know the soundboard and like how that works, and at least like get to know the basics, because you might be in a situation where you need to know that. And then the last one is how to talk to parents. Like, another thing, girl was lost. Like, and when you are a young teacher, you just kind of look at parents like, wow, I'm scared, because you don't have a child yourself. Maybe you do, but like most of us don't. And so like, I don't know what it's like to be a parent. I haven't carried that weight yet in my life. That's just something that I'm ignorant to. And so talking to parents about their child is like just something that I like found very scary at first. And I felt like I wasn't even qualified. Like, I had kind of imposter syndrome. And so if you can talk to your music education professors, talk to mentor teachers, talk to your cooperating teachers, and just say like, how do I talk to parents in XYZ situations? Like, basically like positive phone calls, like how do you do those? Like 10 positive phone calls every 3 months. That was like a goal I had in my first year of teaching. What do you do when you're in the principal's office, like in a room with a parent and a student? What do you do when like a parent sends you an angry email about something? And we're music teachers, so like we're gonna get angry emails sometimes when someone's child doesn't make it to like a certain ensemble. This feels like a theme for me, and I don't mean it for it to be, but it was just like a theme in my first year of teaching. So yeah, and I'm still a little scared talking to parents, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better at it just through some practice and talking to older teachers who have done it before. So just do as much as you can to ask those questions before you actually get into the classroom.
I'm going to go ahead and retweet Grace on a couple of things. Purchase orders. I still have no idea how to do a purchase order, and that's totally okay. I'm in year 4. I always ask Rachel to just do it because I have no idea, and I always mess it up somehow. Communication, also a very large thing that is a huge part of your successes and your failures in your first couple of years of teaching. So learning how to interact with teachers in the building, with your administrators, with parents, with kids, like all those things are not things that are inherent or things that are so natural for a lot of people. So actually understanding those things. I have 2 main points, and there's like a separate thing I kind of want to talk about. The first one that I think is really important, particularly in today's times, I think of how to just be a little bit more aware and culturally responsive in your teaching, understanding other cultures, understanding how that ties into your classroom, understanding how your choices of repertoire tie into that. I mean, all those things, there are so many different avenues that you can go within that, but just being culturally responsive and being aware of the dynamic, the culture of your building, of your program, all those things are very, very important to the longevity and your successes and the successes of your kids as well. Instrument repair is a huge thing. I knew how to pull a mouthpiece, but I learned that mostly from student teaching. That is something that I kind of had no idea how to do. And so as I've kind of gotten older, particularly working with middle school kids, I have learned a lot of tricks of the trade, but that is something that I don't think you could ever get enough information on how to repair certain instruments, particularly if you're teaching middle school kids. And then the last thing I want to point out, I think it's been a common theme with the people who spoke before me on this question, but we have a lot of really fantastic faculty at U of I. I mean, second to none in so many different avenues, whether it's, RL skills or band or choir or whatever the case is. I mean, just our faculty was and is just second to none. But the thing that I think I learned pretty early on, and something that I kind of took with me, is that ultimately, as you start teaching, you want your kids to take ownership of their learning. And I think the same thing needs to be reflective of you in undergrad or in whatever program you're in. I think that there are a lot of times where we expect for us to just learn things. And of course, we go to school to learn, but you also, at some level, some degree, have to take ownership of your learning. And if there's something that you don't know or something that you would like to know, you should take responsibility in trying to learn those things. I mean, you have a vast amount of resources and things available to you, whether it's the actual faculty asking questions, getting to know them personally, using the internet, YouTube, I mean, whatever the case is, Facebook messaging. I'm not ashamed to say that I have Facebook message Robert Herrings or Chip DeStefano. I'm like, hey man, I don't know how to teach this. What do I do so I don't suck? I think that the world is so connected and there are so many resources available to you that you almost do yourself and your future students a disservice if you are not actively trying to seek out things that you don't know that you want to learn.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you. All of you. Just so many wonderful themes and thoughts. I still have flashbacks to purchase orders. When I took over my job
Terrible.
in Massachusetts, they're just like, they're a thing. And then every school district is different, right? So once you learn how to do it one way, you go somewhere else and it's like, oh yeah, nothing like that. This is how we do it. Right. Yeah. So totally understand that. Well, Grace kind of touched on this a little bit about the idea of imposter syndrome. And, I've been teaching for, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 15 years now. And I still deal with this and I still struggle with this. And so, what are some of y'all's tips? Oh, I missed Faith. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Let's go back.
Sorry, that's okay. I didn't want to disrupt the flow.
No, interrupt me.
I guess that kind of leads into one of my points, which is sorry. I do have 3 points. I'll try to make it quick, but from my first point would be like from an administrative/community standpoint, I wish I learned better how to advocate for myself. So I guess that kind of applied to what just happened. Maybe because I am an introvert at heart, but knowing how to, no, you're fine. Don't feel bad. Just knowing how to stand up for your program. Especially when you're competing against like math and science courses, AP courses, kids who are like, oh, colleges, I'm not going to music, so I'm not going to take music anymore, stuff like that. Learning how to, I think we did talk about it in college actually, but I just wish we had more time to develop concrete strategies on recruiting and retention. And other things like how do you start a boosters? How do you start fundraiser? Because when I got to my district, there was a lot of support for the band realm, but not so much for the orchestra realm. So it would be nice to know how to start from scratch. My second point is from a more general teacher standpoint is how to make your classroom equitable for all students to participate in. So I came from a district where it was white, affluent, and you were able to purchase an instrument and participate in music. But then when I got to my job, I realized it's not always the same for every district or every program. I had students who didn't have an instrument, so I was like scrambling in the back of the closet, finding like these jank instruments to let them use and borrow. So yeah, I wish I had a better way of preparing for that, but I guess it'd be nice to have some backup plans for that, or just kind of mentally prepare yourself for that to happen, because not every program is going to be as resourceful as maybe the ones you grew up in. And I think there was this one class that I really wish I appreciated more, which was the differentiating instructions class, where you had to teach music for students with varying abilities. And I currently have a student who is deaf in music, which is surprisingly not that uncommon in my last 2 years of teaching. So I definitely had to think ahead on how to plan certain activities, but don't take that class lightly. I wish I took better notes, or like, really understood the importance of that more when I was in there. I mean, I definitely appreciated it, but that is something that will carry with you. And admin really likes hearing how you differentiate things. So yeah. One last thought. A more musical specific point is I wish we learned how to analyze music outside of Western art music by, I don't know, especially this year where I'm trying to be more inclusive, and I want students to feel represented in the music realm. I want to get outside of that, Western classical European tradition, which is kind of hard because our music ensembles are built off of Western European tradition. But this definitely forced me to do my research. And I used to not really like the music history course. I didn't do that hot in it, but now I have like a newfound appreciation for music history after I did all my research on like varying composers, like composers of color, female composers, and just like getting my students excited and interested that, there's so much more to orchestra, band, or choir than just classical music, because I don't want them to think that classical music is the elite of anything. I want them to be well-rounded and understand and appreciate all sorts of music. So that's my takeaway.
Dr. Messina, can I say one thing just in regards to what Faith said? I just, one thing that you said that really struck me is when you talked about differentiating instruction. And I think for me, at least personally, it's just my 2 cents. From where I came from and what my program was in high school and those things, I thought I knew what differentiating instruction was. I thought I knew what the value in it was. I thought I understood what goes on in classrooms. But I think sometimes as either us as teachers or college professors or whatever the case is, some things that are just so important, like differentiating instruction and knowing why that's so important, I don't think I really grasped that concept. And I'm not saying that's the fault of any singular person, but as you understand or as you're explaining these things or having these courses that are so vital to, being a really good and thorough and thoughtful teacher, explaining why those things are so important and explaining how those things are going to come up more and more and more, and really having those open and honest conversations, I think would lead to a little bit more engagement on all ends, whether that's in our own classrooms or whatever the case is. So I think, if you don't have that, none of us had that experience yet to know what it's like to teach kids that needed differentiated instruction. So having that explanation and talking about it in an open forum, I think is really important, and something that probably could help students understand the importance of that before they actually have that experience.
That's great. Thank you all. And sorry again, Faith.
No worries.
Just 2 quick thoughts that Dr. Shoya. Go ahead.
I just took notes of everything you said, and I'm going to share this with my students. But I wanted to say 2 things I've heard, which actually we are making changes in our curriculum right now at the School of Music so we can accommodate these things. And one which came up is the soundboard, how to use the soundboard and sound design. We are having a course when you enter the school. We are thinking about these things, that all of you will go through some kind of a basic knowledge of or teaching of how to use these things. So I think it's a really good thing. And the other I wanted to point out is the Western art music, which I think we made tremendous amount of changes. I can speak for myself because I teach core theory in terms of musicianship and oral skills. We really made lots of changes there. So now if you're studying now, you would be getting a lot of other music than just Western art. So I hope it would just help to put everything into perspective. I'm giving it back to you, Dr. Messina.
Yeah, no, I think we all are using this moment to reflect on our curriculum and whatnot. I know I've definitely gone through my conducting syllabus and realized that the textbook that we used for examples was all dead white guys, and so I've done 3 or 4 of them now of score reductions of diverse composers just to incorporate into the conducting repertoire. So I think it's a great moment. So one quick tip that I received from a mentor back in the day, which I think touches on everything that you all said, was your teaching license is your license to learn. So I think we sometimes think that we need to know all things when we go out, but like there's only so much time in the curriculum, and it's already a busy curriculum as it is to get your music education degree, and so we get to as much as we can to make you successful in that first year, and then like I think it was Josh who said, like take advantage of your own education. So it's great. Love it. Thank you. So as I rudely interrupted before, at this point, I'm just being self-deprecating. So we were going to talk about imposter syndrome. And so if each of you could talk just a little bit about how do you overcome imposter syndrome, or that feeling of that you're not as successful maybe as those around you, or successful as maybe the pressure you put on yourself. So why don't we start with Faith, since we'll give you the first go so we don't miss you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I will say, when I was trying to answer this, I honestly feel like I'm still struggling with imposter syndrome, so I don't think there is one quick tip to overcome it. But I think it is a long race. Teaching is just like this long race, and you just have to do what you can to just keep going. So I guess like little things I do are like my first year of teaching, I used to like keep a journal of like good things that happen, because I feel like we dwell so much on our mistakes and what went wrong and whatnot that we forget that like there are so many moments where like kids really appreciate you and showed that they loved you as their teacher. And I think that speaks volumes too, if not more than our bad days. I also like to keep like a box of memories. I don't know, just anything I can, keep to remind myself to look over, to be like, okay, like I'm not a totally terrible teacher. Like I had my good days, and that's important for me to acknowledge and to let myself find victory over. Another thing that was very reassuring is whenever I talk to veteran teachers and they're like, oh yeah, I don't know what I'm doing yet either. And I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one. Just know that your peers and even veteran teachers are also struggling with this, and they also, are, maybe doubting themselves or having bad days too. So it's really tough, and I would say just to keep thinking in perspective and whatnot. And one thing that an alumni told me as I was going into student teaching, she said, you know more than you think. So not to put down on you know, all the training that you had, all the experiences that you have, big or small, even from when you first started learning your instruments all the way till now. Like all those little things are, you know, experiences that you can teach and share with your students. And yeah, I mean, you know your students better than anyone else, so it's no use trying to compare your craft with someone else's craft when they have a totally different program, set of kids, and whatnot. So yeah, and just know that your students love you. They really do. Just like being there, like they love music, therefore they love you, and vice versa. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, like Faith said, keep the kind notes and like the cards and like everything, because whenever I look through those, I'm like, wow, like I feel on top of the world. Like keep an email folder of the nice emails you've gotten from parents, and just yeah, keep everything, because it just really counts, and it's nice to look back on that and know that you've made a difference. I think my biggest tip for overcoming imposter syndrome is to know that you have a unique set of skills that you're bringing to the table as a musician, and you need to play to your strengths. We all have different strengths. And so I know what my strengths are and I know what I want to improve on. So, like, my strengths are oral skills and like ear training and solfege and also social emotional learning. Like, I love all of that. And so I really try to play to those strengths every day in teaching. But I also know, like, I'm not that great at piano. Like, I need to improve at that. I'm not like super great at like being I don't want to say it like this, but like I'm not very good at like being the bad cop when I need to be with students and like setting like boundaries with them when they break the rules. And I need to get better at that. And so I'm working on some things, but I know that I'm really good at other things. And that's what keeps my confidence going. I also don't try to be my colleagues, and I don't try to be my cooperating teachers. And for a while I tried to be, and then I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm so cool. Like, I am very unique. And like what Jordan was saying, like they can sense if you're not being yourself. And so I think just like own it. And even though it's hard to own it, just do it. It's likely that if you make a mistake, they don't even notice. You're the one with the music degree, you know, like you're the one who knows you made a mistake, but it just, you know, keep going. And like what Faith said, like they love you. They're in music. They're there to be there in a community, and you're a part of that community. You are leading that community. So, yeah, my biggest tip is just as much as you can, try to own it.
I'm going to start off again with reiterating what Faith and Grace also said, retweeting them once again. I also have in our office, I have a big billboard of like all my student notes. I have a folder at home. I've got emails. I do that as well. I go back and I read those, and those kind of sit there as I work every day. And it kind of goes back to those relationships that we have all been preaching about so much. The other thing I would like to also talk about and reiterate is just being yourself and not trying to be. This is a conversation I just recently had. Not trying to be anybody else but you. Like, I have absolutely zero qualms about arguing with a 12-year-old about how Ariana Grande is the superior artist in pop music right now. No qualms, no issues with that. And the kids know that, and we will go back and forth about it all day. You know, I have started this new thing where I've been wearing like dangly earrings, and the kids live for it because when I get super sassy, like they like dangle, and that's just not who Rachel is, but that's totally who I am. And so I think those things are super, super important. On a more serious note, I do have a couple of other points as well. Imposter syndrome and just that feeling and that pressure of trying to prove yourself or whatever, that is a huge, huge, huge thing. And if I'm going to be very blunt, which, you know, Dr. Messina and Dr. Scholl, you know, I am very blunt and honest about things. I think the ego aspect of musicians and band directors and choir directors, that is a huge issue that I have with our profession. And there's a couple things that I just want to point out. Number one, with this whole journey with the pandemic, we're all starting from square one. Nobody knows how to do this. So I really don't care about X, Y, and Z. I'm not trying to prove myself to anybody else because we're all trying to figure it out. Even if you've been teaching for 30 years, actually, you know, the people who have been teaching for maybe 2 years probably have it figured out in certain regards a little bit better than they do. So I think that's important. And the other thing is, one thing that I really try to do, and maybe this is partially because I'm a nerd, but I genuinely and honestly try to go and support my colleagues as much as possible. And for me, it has nothing to do with, you can get so caught up in, well, my band played better than this band and blah, 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 blah. But there is something that just brings me so much joy, and a couple of things. At the state conference this past year, Spencer Heil is one of my best friends in the whole entire world. And I was moved to tears from his performance, but not even just that, with me seeing how he interacted with his students in the very genuine, before the concert, like the genuine reciprocated respect and love that the students had for him and he had for his students. Like, that was something that brought me so much joy. And I like to just go and watch old Superstate recordings and look at all these fantastic groups and fantastic students and fantastic directors who are doing so many wonderful things in our state. And I think that the more that you can set aside your own personal whatever and just acknowledge and accept and praise the other fantastic people who are doing fantastic things, the more that you learn, number one, but also the more that you feel like you don't have to try to prove yourself. Be who you are, bring what you can bring to the table, know your strengths and weaknesses, but then learn from the other people. And I just think as you compare yourself to other people, you just kind of go into this big pigeoning hole of just trying to do the right things for the wrong reasons. So I just full-heartedly believe in just being supportive of everyone and acknowledging that everybody is on a different journey than you, and you can't compare apples to oranges, and just do your thing and do it to the best of your ability. And that's the only thing that you can ask for.
Love all of that. Love it. I'll try and bring some more things, even though they might not have been on my paper here. But I'll say, be careful comparing yourselves or your ensembles, even across the hall, to the choir director. Like, that person's probably been there a really long time compared to you, who will soon be in your first year. So, like, if they're a all-state group right now and they're like kicking butt and taking names, that's great. Like, celebrate that and learn as much as you can from that group, and the director and your coworker and everything like that. But also be realistic about what is happening to you, which is you're a first-year teacher. So, like, be realistic on a musician level. I think Grace talked about it earlier. We're coming from a fantastic performing arts college, like, incredible. So you're moving from Cranert to a soundboard that you don't know how to control. So, like, take that into consideration too. And moving on from the negative, I'll say, do talk to your peers, stay in touch with people. Reach out to me if you need to. Like, I'm on Facebook. I don't use it too often, but like, find me on Twitter, Instagram, something like that. Shoot me a DM and say, hey, Jordan, I want to know if it's a problem if my students are reusing the mash that we cut a hole in, because I think that's gross, but the other high school in my district is doing that. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of gross. You're probably right. Simple questions like that with your peers, it just kind of reaffirms what you're doing. You can ask what they're playing. You can kind of listen to each other's recordings. I know I had a bunch of my good friends come and help me with auditions. I like bought them Jimmy John's and told them I'd return the favor. Like, stay in touch with people, because there's a ton of people in the same exact situation as you. And some of them may be in worse situations than you. And it's just collaborate with people. And then last thing I'll say is, we're in a really unique position as music teachers. When you look at the entire high school or middle school or elementary school, you're going to have performances, as whether it's Fridays with your recorders or everyone's on their electronic keyboards for like 8th grade, whatever it is. Or if you're a high school and you have major concerts you're putting on, you're going to have performances. So use that as an opportunity to kind of bask in the awesome things that you're doing. You just took a bunch of minors and made awesome music with it. Like, that should be enough confirmation to you that, like, this is cool what you're doing. The kids are enjoying it. You're enjoying it, and actually bask in what you're doing. Don't sit there and get super caught up that you had an E string squeak on the last chord. Like, great, it happened. But like, sit there and think about it. And if you look at the positives, a lot of that imposter syndrome will kind of go away. At least it has for me, if you don't get caught up in all of the kind of dirt and dust.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. I need to be a little bit of looking at the time here, because we need to finish in an hour. Otherwise, we run over. And so your next question, you have 30 seconds to answer. Okay. And otherwise, after 30 seconds, You're gonna do that. Okay. So all good things must end, I guess. But so the question is, what is your suggestion to establish a very good, healthy work-life balance? Josh.
All right, work-life balance. When you go home, as much as possible, try not to open the laptop again. If I have an email that is super pressing, I get it to my phone and I will respond via phone. But otherwise, I try to get as much done as possible during school. Rachel and I are both big, firm believers in that. It's not healthy, but I do usually work through my lunch, and as much time as I have any other time, I try to get as much done at school before I go. But by 4 o'clock, when I'm done with everything, I turn it off, and when I come home, I am done for the most part.
Yeah, I'll be quick as well. If you do need to take things home, like everyone needs a lesson plan every once in a while, or pick your concerts or do some grading, book an hour. You get 1 hour after you get home at 7 p.m. If you get home at 7 p.m., don't do any more work. But you get 1 hour to do that. And then also, don't turn on email notifications on your phone. You're insane if you do that. I think I get 800 emails a day. Just, I have the app, and that's good enough.
Sorry. Okay. I don't know if I have much to add to that because I'm also still trying to figure out work-life balance. I will echo the no emails over the weekend. I think I still tend to work over the weekend, but at least I can just focus on not talking and socializing with school people over the weekend. Just keep those 2 days to myself. Also, maybe have a good relationship with your coworkers so that you guys have something to bond over. You can have downtime together, you can work together, just make the process less lonely. I think is also important.
So in college, you have this like ongoing sort of personality of like, I have so much to do and I'm so busy and I'm so anxious and like, oh my gosh, I'm just going. And when you start working and you hit your 20s, like mid 20s, you're like, oh, my personality isn't just work. I have to like work on myself in other ways. And so make goals for yourself that have nothing to do with teaching music. And I promise that it will pay off. It really will.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Preach. Yeah. I'm with you. Having a hobby outside. I don't think I learned that until my 30s.
Oh my gosh. Rachel and I were just talking about that. She was saying compared to a lot of other band directors, like I have so many other interests outside of just band. Like I rarely want to talk about band when I go home or with other people ever. And I just try not to talk about it.
Yeah. Find a good TV show on Netflix or go hiking, get outside, like just any of that stuff.
Or start cooking. Do it. Just do it. Just get into the kitchen and do it.
Meal prep.
Yeah, meal prep. Like, it brings me joy. Great joy.
I love it. It makes me want to cook now. I'm a good Sicilian boy, so I like making like homemade ravioli and lasagna and all this. Yeah, it's just now I want to go cook. But alas, it's after 8. All right, so the last little lightning round here. Looking back, and with all of your experience that you have now, what is the best piece of advice that you can give our students as they are about to embark on their own journey in the teaching profession? So let's start with Jordan.
I'll just reiterate what myself and a lot of people have said earlier, which is be yourself. It's really important to try and figure out who yourself is with your hobbies and everything, and try to be true to that person. Don't try and be something you're not, because that's when you get in trouble.
My piece of advice is to realize that the people right in front of you are people before they are musicians. And so focus on teaching the whole student. And, again, like in college, you are going. And for good reason. Like you get trained very well as a musician. And I feel like we all were. And that's fabulous. But then you need to take that, kind of back pocket it and be like, okay, people first, and then music. Also make friends with your custodian.
I would say ask for help, and it's okay not to know everything. No one's no one's expecting you to know everything. So just ask and be honest and be humble about it too. And it's okay. And everyone understands because they're like, oh yeah, first year teacher, it's okay. So people are very forgiving your first year, so don't sweat it. And one more is more than just a music teacher, you are their mentor. And that's an advice that a science teacher gave me when I started. More than just a teacher, you're their mentor. They look up to you in so many ways. So just teach them not only the content, but how to be a good human being and respect them as a good human being.
Well, every single person stole what I was going to say. And then I was like, oh, I should say this instead. And then that person said that. So I'll just reiterate everything that everybody said. Number one, relationships are super important. And you have to foster and really work to nurture your relationships with your kids. Be yourself. And also, the last thing I was going to say was kind of what Faith was talking about. What did you say again, Faith? I had so many things in my head that I lost it.
Ask for help. Or
yeah, ask for help. Don't be afraid to, like I said, message Robert Herrings on Facebook. All of us got into this profession because we love people and we love to help everybody else. And so those people who you think are untouchable are all very open to hearing from you and would like to help you as well. So just being open to that.
That's great. And don't forget that I'm assuming I speak for Dr. Shoya, but I know when my students graduate, I expect them to be able to come back and ask for help anytime. Our relationship as teacher student and future colleague doesn't end at graduation. It's just the beginning. So please come back and see us and ask questions. And there are no stupid questions. We are always happy to help. So
I still call Dr. Shoya like all the time. I don't even give her warning. I'm like, hey, I think we're on this level. Can I call you and ask you a question? And she answers, and like she's there for me. So always rely on your mentors and ask for help.
Oh my gosh, I can't reiterate that enough. I mean, I'm sure Dr. Morehouse and Professor Hauser and Dr. Davis are all sick of me at this point, but I'm like, hey, can I ask you a question? I literally texted Dr. Morehouse the other day, like, can we set up a time to talk? Because I need help.
That's great. Well, Dr. Shoya, any closing thoughts?
Well, my closing thought is that you brought little tears into my eyes while you were talking about this, because I have to say that I am so honored that I have taught you, because what you've all just were saying today, all that wisdom and all that insight, and the fact that the students are in the center of your teaching and what you do is it was very touching. So thank you for the invitation, and I'm just honored to be on this screen with you all, and I'm so proud that you were one of our students. I'm in awe, so thank you.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists, Grace, Faith, Josh, Jordan. This was really fantastic, and I'm so excited to share this with our students in our virtual ensembles, and there's some students that are doing this as just as an independent study as well. So thank you for sharing your time and for being amazing and wonderful examples out in the profession. So thank you to everyone who joined us to watch this, and we hope you will seek out other fantastic sessions included in Encore at Illinois. And with that, we'll end with a big ILL.
INI.
There we go.
INI.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.